Mr. Dele Farotimi. It's a pleasure to have you again, sir.
He's not calling to Dele Farotimi. It's just Dele. Dele. How's the name?
Let's go away. In the light of how the last presidential elections and the national elections has been described as one of the worst in this country's electoral process, questions are being raised. By what metrics? What's your analysis?
Well, I'll be careful to speak strictly to only what I know, either to be facts or what I witnessed on my own. What happened on the 25th of February might be evaluated in two parts. The first part should deal with the people themselves. The Nigerian people, I can speak specifically to Lagos State because this is where I reside. The Nigerian people turned out in their numbers, in unprecedented numbers, to exercise their franchise. That is not in consonance with what had happened before that day, the level of citizens' engagement with the process. So all the promises that INEC had given people, the works that had been done by multiple civil society organizations and individuals who had reconnected the people back to the PVC in the hope that we might be able to have genuine changes at the polls in deference to the yearnings and aspirations of a lot of Nigerians. So as far as Nigerians were concerned, Nigerians trooped out, they were engaged, but that is the point where elections ended. Citizens' engagement. And the word citizen is important, and we'll come back to it as I answer your question. So Nigerians were generally engaged, even in parts of Nigeria where they had given up on Nigeria. And it's not just in the Southeast. It's always very easy to identify the change movement with the Southeast, which is the home region of the candidate that came to symbolize the yearning and aspiration for change. But when you consider the fact that in places like Benue, in places like Plateau, in places like Yobe, in places like Borno, in places like Rivers, in Edo, in Delta, in vast parts of the Southwest itself, there was a palpable demand for a different direction, and the people came out like that. So you realize very quickly that where the system had not expected to find cohesion, they were shocked to find cohesion. Where the system had not expected that common purposes would be found, common purposes were found across the country. So the people, insofar as it relates to the 25th of February, demonstrated a willingness and a desire to live together as one and to change the system through the peaceful route offered by the electoral system. But that was where it ended. INEC proved to be exactly what it has always been. Completely Nigerian. Nigerian in the sense of everything that has been bad with our country for a long time. It preferred to be ruled by impunity instead of the guidelines and order that it had promised the Nigerian people. So in every way that it was possible for INEC to fail as an institution, it failed woefully. In a sane environment, in a system where they are truly citizens, strictly so-called, in a system governed by law, Professor Yakubu, he should be in jail by now because of the multiple infractions of the guidelines that he himself publicly eulogized, sold to everybody from Nigeria to the international community. Straight down the line, we had multiple failures. These are already in the public space. And I speak as Dele Farotimi, a retired lawyer, in case you have forgotten. Now, in that failure. You had INEC servers, or whatever they called it, being switched off. You had beavers unable to transmit result, not because it is incapable of doing so, but because human beings decided to intervene. Because if they allowed the system to work, the room for impunity would disappear. So everything the man promised he promised a Rolls Royce, but he didn't even deliver a jalopy. He delivered an omolanke, unfit for purpose. That is what the man has done at great cost. The money that he has just wasted, squandered, organizing the nonsense that he has now called an election, which is the point of departure with the 25th. I am careful, not because I am particularly respectful of any one of the many lying institutions, but because some people have elected to go to court. I am hoping that that court system will be the perfect place to unrobe the Nigerian state. I remember when we were talking after the NSAS, and I was explaining why we were going to the tribunal. I said it, and we were on record as saying that we didn't expect to get justice out of the system, but that since they had opened a tribunal, that we will go to that tribunal and use the tribunal to establish the fact that there was indeed a massacre. And we eventually used that tribunal, and kudos to the chairwoman of the tribunal. We used that tribunal, the same tribunal set up by the state, comprising of members only nominated by the state. We used that same tribunal to prove that the governor was lying. We used that tribunal to prove that the Nigerian police and the Nigerian army are institutional killers and liars. We used the same tribunal to unrobe the state to the point where you began to have inspectors discovering camcorders and things. So I am confident that the OB team at the tribunal would equally use the tribunal to unrobe INEC and different members of the debauched lot who sit in that place and pretend to be serving the country whilst they are ruining it and lining their own pockets. So insofar as it relates to the 25th of February, yes, the people did their part, and INEC failed them as it has always done. The police failed them as they always have, because the police stood by whilst thugs who work in tandem with governors. This is where I speak to the confluence of interest between the criminal elements. Sometimes, even now, you now know that the criminal elements and the traditional institutions in certain parts of the country are in bed with the state. So you have an unholy trinity, and the people are the constant victims. So yes, we had an election. We the people did. INEC ensured that our will has not been reflected.
Now, consider the fact that the credibility of that election had been called to question. A lot of Nigerians are quite skeptical about the next governorship and state houses of assemblies election.
Rightly so.
There are widespread voter apathy, so to speak. And consider the fact that Nigerians are quite skeptical. They're afraid that their votes might not count, and that they're going to the poll again on Saturday will be a waste of time and effort.
Let me tell you this. If our votes would not count, we wouldn't have seen INEC as desperate as it was on the 25th. Our votes count. If our votes will not count, they will not be going around burning markets. If our votes will not count, they will not be busy buying all sorts of expired politicians to come back to their side so that they can. It's almost like football transfer season. You're having governorship candidates bought, political parties bought, but that should not offer any surprises to anyone. Instead of buying delegates, they were buying governors. So why should it surprise anybody that they are buying candidates who are not really candidates in any election, if the truth be told? How come that people who had a lot of negative things to say about them yesterday have suddenly become their friends today after they bought an extra week from INEC. You should understand that what they want is voters' apathy, because it is in the midst of voters' apathy that they are able to achieve their goal. No matter how much intimidation, no matter how, if they like, let them have 1,000 MC mushroom picking roaming the streets of Lagos. If the people are engaged in the process, if they are out in force and in number, and they are voting, the truth of the matter is that the powers of the MC mushroom pickings of this world are minimized when we turn out in our numbers. Refusing to come out and vote because you are afraid, you've been scared, you've been divided, you've been left disillusioned by what has happened, merely leaves the space open to those who had set out originally to ensure that that is exactly what you will do. Remember, in answering your earlier question, I pointed out that when we decided to go to the NSAS panel, for instance, we went there because we were convinced that we had preponderance of evidence to prove what we were saying about the culpability of the governor, the army, the police, and the state itself. So we used the venue provided by the government. Now, if we had ignored to go ab initio, we would have handed them the opportunity to do what they had hoped to do, which was to create the narrative and manage the narrative and have a show before the world and call it a tribunal. They would have had control of the narrative. And they had done a fantastic job, aided by multiple people that Nigerians would never have expected to find culpable in that kind of ignoble act. But they had the narrative already until Ramimba stepped in. Anyway, that's another story for another day. But in this election, our people must understand that if you do not buy the ticket, you cannot win a lottery. If you have given up ab initio that, oh, because of all the things they have done, because there is a possibility that they might be violent, because of these, there are always going to be 1,001 reasons not to come out. But understand this, not coming out validates the evil that you are running away from. You are going to live with it for the next 4 years. The ones that are scaring you away from voting, those ones will go to bed after the elections. The ones that are going to come to you will be the ones wearing bow ties and things. When they come, they will not be coming with cutlasses, but I guarantee you, you will be seeing all sorts of bills. Because those ones that are scaring you off now, including the bearded clowns, they make money from our collective misery. The one that I find funniest about all of this is the fact that the indigenes who are being coerced into celebrating Oro in these late hours, they are going to come through the toll gates that the system has built. They will pay the same amount as the people they are asking them to be afraid of. Nobody is going to discriminate as to who is passing through and how much that person is paying. The collapsed infrastructure that we have all endured for the last 24 years, it will remain. It's not the Igbo in Lagos State that has been digging up the roads that all of us are going through bad roads. When you leave your house in the morning, if you live in the Lekki-Ekpe axis, for instance, if you live at Aoyaya and your office is in VI, typically, that was where most people who went to buy land and have today built in that area, that's where they work. Ikoyi VI. It's a minimum of 3 hours. If you make the error of leaving your home later than 5 o'clock, it's about 4 hours just to get to work in the morning. It's not going to change simply because you revalidated a threat that you have received from those you should know are your true enemies. So when you look at the totality of what is at stake on Saturday, and what is at stake on Saturday is something that has never happened before. Let's be frank with ourselves. Lagos is important to the future of Nigeria on multiple levels. When Obasanjo was busy chasing Tinubu around in 2003, 2004, I warned at the time that Obasanjo was creating a monster that would bite everybody in the ass, because he made Tinubu into some sort of opposition figure, a progressive politician. He helped him build his image, whilst the man had exceedingly rapacious policies, stripping the people of Lagos State of their wealth and privatizing the Commonwealth. Obasanjo's overreach made it possible for him to operate without being challenged, because it became, oh, he's the one challenging Obasanjo's running rampage all over the place, and he created this monster. The monster he created during his own tenure, when he should have focused on succession and obedience to the rule of law, credible elections, that monster is what is biting everybody today. So now that monster is threatening to take over the seat of power in Abuja with his purchased mandate, a purchased mandate. That monster is now looking to use the instrumentality of hate, ethnic bigotry, in addition to religion, which he had long established as a basis for power, to retain power in the most important of all states in Nigeria. Maybe people don't understand this. Lagos is the fifth, either the fourth or the fifth largest economy in Africa. It doesn't have the fifth best school system. It does not have the fifth best rail system. It does not have the fifth best healthcare delivery system. It is not ranked fifth in anything good. And it has been the sole possession and toy of a man for 24 years. That man is now doing everything he can to retain possession of the state. Whether he burns it down completely before it is taken, or whether he is able to take it by foul means. He doesn't care. Power is to be, you grab it, you chase it. That is his concept of power. So Lagos State election on Saturday is beyond, it's not just about casting a ballot. It's about determining the future of a country. It's about deciding whether you are happy to be governed by what is essentially a criminal franchise, because that is what it is. A franchise that will deploy all manner of violence in order to retain power, that will deploy hatred in order to retain power. That is not, and it is not, that's not a political franchise, that's a criminal franchise.
Let's look at the efforts by the legal team in order to reclaim the mandate, so to say, the purchased mandate, so to say. Considering the litanies of legal failures of the Supreme Court and the fact that most Nigerians do not even repose any kind of confidence in the Supreme Court itself. We've seen the bureaucratic bottlenecks that the LP's presidential candidate and his legal teams are already, going through with regards to the election materials, and, questions are also being raised that with the stranglehold that these elements, or criminal elements, so to speak, still have on the judiciary as well as on the executive arm of government and the Senate. Do you see anything coming out from the Supreme Court at all?
I would answer that question in two parts. I'll answer first as somebody with legal training, even though no longer a lawyer. I'll say, let the lawyers in the court have their day in the court. We're still at the preliminary stages of the search to take the mandate, the judicial process. Is early stages yet. INEC, of course, has shown itself to be exactly what it is, a criminal enterprise looking to cover up its own tracks. So it's been as obfuscating as it possibly can be. It's been as incoherent as it possibly can be. It has stonewalled as much as it possibly can. I witnessed that personally as part of the team that went to the Lagos wreck a couple of days back, and I know what difficulties we encountered, even though as of today, we have been promised access and a team is already with them seeking to do that. But stepping out of the lawyer mode and speaking as a Nigerian now, remember that, and it's good that we have the example of NSAS to refer to. The government spent God knows how much money on all sorts of evil influencers to deny what happened at Lekki Toll Gate. It spent tremendous amount of money. It co-opted men who you would once have considered advocates of truth and justice. Corrupted. No, they didn't become corrupted yesterday. They'd been for a while. But they became part of that enterprise, all in a bid to deny the evil that they did. But those of us who spoke clearly as to the fact that there is no justice to be found, we were sufficiently confident in the amount of evidence that were in our possession. If you have gunshot victims, you have video evidence of what happened. We had preponderance of, as at the time we were coming out to say that there was a massacre, we had over 10 eyewitnesses whose testimonies we had recorded. And we recorded them separately and all tallied in material detail. We had physical evidence, we had photographic. So we were confident to come out and tell the government in the public that we dare them. I remember using that, I said, we triple dare them. Let them set up that tribunal. And they did. And we used the instrumentality of the tribunal, even though we had expressed our lack of faith in the system. But because we were confident that nobody could deny what we had. They could not be denied. The rule of evidence is very clear, and it might be difficult for outsiders to see everything, but the tribunal saw it, and it was a unanimous decision of the tribunal, including persons nominated by the government who came from the Ministry of Justice, who have today been promoted to become judges in Lagos State. They saw the evidence, and unanimously, in the language of the tribunal, they said there was a massacre. So Jide Sanwo-Olu can continue lying that there wasn't one.
They attempted to discredit him.
That's up to him. What do you want a drowning man to say? He can lie all he wants. He lied so much that sometimes he forgets what the truth has become. Listen, the man who is telling you that there was nothing, he superintended the payment of 100 million naira to families of those who lost their lives and persons who survived with physical and emotional trauma. They paid in cash in 2 tranches of 50 million. So the same person will now come on here and he will be denying that anything happened, or he will be minimizing what happened. The tribunal is set up comprising of 7 or 9 members, nominated entirely by the government, unanimously said there was a massacre. So, but to relate it to the issue,
exactly.
The electoral tribunal, the Presidential Election Tribunal would have no choice but to come to the same conclusion that INEC has stolen what does not belong to Bola Tinubu and handed it to him.
So, let's get this clear.
Yes.
Your party and the PDP have claimed victory for itself in the elections, accusing INEC of complicity in the emergence of Bola Tinubu as the winner of that election.
Yes.
We are now at a point where critics of INEC have continued to reject that result, dredging up what is considered to be evidence of how the election was compromised.
Yes.
The question that is still yet to be answered or remains unanswered, and I'd like to get your perspective on this.
Yes.
Nigerians would like to get your perspective.
Yes.
That if they observe the irregularities in that elections, are they substantial enough to have produced a different result?
Okay. You see, there is this dangerous thing that we do in our country. We ignore the issue, and then we set up straw man arguments to distract from the issue. The issue is this: was there an election worthy of his name conducted on the 25th of February. And incidentally, I think it is a little misleading and playing into the preferred narrative of the evil system to suggest that it is only the PDP and the Labour Party that are complaining about the result or rejecting the result of the last election. The fact that those two are the ones that have been decreed second and third might tend to lend credence to what you have said, because they are the more credible voices to demand anything of the electoral body in view of the manifest widespread nature of the electoral fraud that were perpetrated.
But the other parties have not claimed to have won in that election.
Now, they have look, this thing is simple. I'll show you one. We had persons on the ground in Maiduguri during the election. There is no news channel in this country that carried the news that the Monday market in Maiduguri was set on fire and it kept burning until Monday before the fire brigade would do anything about it. What was that? What was their crime? They voted Labour Party. In places where INEC result was showing 0-0-0, we knew what transpired in those places. In places where nobody expected Labour Party to win, Labour Party won. But Labour Party won because it became the symbol for those whom Nigeria had disenfranchised. Those whose voice had been silenced for so long, who nobody hears. I'll show you one. Southern Bauchi, and I'm saying this from having seen all sort of figures and stuff that have been posted. I've also seen some raw figures in some other. In Southern Bauchi, from only 4 polling units, Peter Obi got more votes in 4 polling units in Bauchi South than was declared for him in the whole of Bauchi. No, in the whole of Bauchi South. I'm using Bauchi South, not South. Okay. No, not the whole of Bauchi. Only 4 polling units in Bauchi South gave him more votes than was declared for him in the entire Bauchi South. If you go to a state like Rivers, the governor was so desperate in his desire to deliver the state to APC that he was careless about getting caught in multiple acts, himself directly or his agents there on video. In Najegunle, Ali Zatueji, the Labour Party candidate, recorded direct tipexing, criminal act by an officer sworn by law not to do exactly what he was doing. So you're not dealing with a few irregularities. You're dealing with a situation where INEC deliberately subverted its own system in order to achieve a predetermined outcome. These will be proven before the court because I know we can prove it. That Peter Obi is saying, and our campaign is saying that he won, is not based on figures plucked from the air. What INEC has done might be likened to when somebody steals something bigger than it can carry, than he or she can carry. They have stolen the product, yes, but they can't take it away because their own evidence, the evidence in their own hands, proves that they are lying. That's why the law courts are there. When the evidence are being presented to the law courts, the Nigerian people, of course, would have the benefit of seeing these evidences themselves. When we went before the Lekki Tribuna, Nigerians saw the evidences now. So it's not something that is shrouded in secrecy. INEC will be unrobed before the Nigerian people.
Why INEC has to be held to its promise to deliver a technology-driven and malpractice-proof election, there's still so much criticism about INEC's effort to redeem itself or its image as far as the March 2015 election is concerned.
See.
Will INEC have the local standards to redeem itself?
You know, little men tend to focus on material gain. And Mahmoud Yakubu is a little man. He's a very little man. He's a Lilliputian. He might have acquired degrees and diplomas, but unfortunately he has very little understanding of life, of the purpose of life. His problem is he should be a man in his late 50s or early 60s now, so he can't live as long as he has already lived. He should be focused on legacy, about what history would say of him. If it is a repetition of what happened on the 25th of February, it will go down in history as the most corrupt, inept, and useless head of INEC. It is up to him to determine and decide how he wishes to be remembered. I don't know what his inducement was, whether it was based on some religious consideration or whether it was a function of filthy lucre. Whatever it is known to him and it is known to God. What I do know is this: history will record that Nigerians were very hopeful on the 25th of February. He and the institution that he leads, INEC, dashed the hope of a lot of Nigerians. It's not about losing an election. No, it's not about losing an election. If we had contested an election and lost the election, and the will of the Nigerian people had been reflected in the outcome of the election, it would be a correct way to gauge where we are as a people. And then the opposition will know what it needs to do and where it needs to do those things in relation to the people who would have delivered their verdict and their mandate. But in a situation where you had institutionalized and systemic stupidity disguised as rigging, such as the one that just took place, it was entirely up to Yakubu to decide whether he wants to go down in history as an idiot or as an hero. It's entirely his call.